When talking about respect and trust, we need to talk about a very important principle in psychology called Johari Window. What does it mean? Each of us lives in a window, divided into 4 panes across 2 dimensions. On one dimension, there are things I know and things I don't know. On the other dimension, there are things others know and things others don't know. This creates 4 quadrants. The first quadrant is what both I and others know, called the open quadrant. What kind of people in this world have a larger public quadrant? Celebrities, leaders, famous entrepreneurs. The more well-known you are, the larger your open quadrant becomes, with more things known both to yourself and to others. Another quadrant consists of things that I know but others do not. Are there such things? Absolutely, it's called privacy. When I ask the students to write down 3 items from their privacy quadrants, they usually laugh and refuse to write because they don't want others to know their privacy. However, are these private things really unknown to others? Not necessarily. The privacy quadrant is divided into 3 layers. The bottom layer is called DDS, Deep Dark Secrets. This is the part you don't want to share. Everyone has DDS. You don't have to tell us, and we shouldn't pry. This is DDS. But above the DDS layer, there's another one called embarrassing to say. For instance, you might have a grievance against a colleague at work. You're very aware of it, but you're too embarrassed to mention it. You notice a flaw in them, but you're hesitant to point it out. These are things that could be shared, but they end up in the private quadrant because of embarrassment. The topmost layer is the most troublesome. Forgot to mention. What does forgot to mention mean? This is a critical issue in leadership. Let's play a game. I'll tap out a song, and you try to guess what it is, okay? So, what do you think is the meaning of this game? This is a study conducted by a female scholar at Harvard University. She earned her PhD in psychology from Harvard through this simple experiment. She termed this phenomenon the curse of knowledge. What does it mean? If you listen to me tapping, you will find it very confusing and incomprehensible. However, if you were the one tapping for others, you would feel that you were tapping very clearly. You might be tapping out a chaotic rhythm that others can't understand, but you think you are playing clearly. Why? Because there is a huge amount of knowledge in your mind, and the melody is playing. You mentally fill in the gaps, so you think it should be understandable. This explains why we often think we have made it clear when talking to others, but the other party doesn't understand it at all. A lot of difficulties and contradictions in work are due to the curse of knowledge. The same is true for marketing. Schlitz beer was not selling well. One day, the owner met an ad man named Hopkins on a train. Hopkins said, "I can help you sell your beer. I'll write the ad for free. Just tell me your unique selling points." The owner said, "My beer's biggest problem is that it doesn't have a unique selling point. It's just like any other beer, made with German craftsmanship and flavor, refreshing the world. There's nothing special." Hopkins replied, "That can't be true. Every product has a selling point. Tell me about your production process." He explained how the beer was made, and when he got to the final step, Hopkins said, "Stop. We've found the selling point." What is it? Before bottling, the beer bottles must be flushed with high-temperature pure oxygen, and then the cap is sealed after flushing. This prevents the beer from spoiling and ensures a great taste. Hopkins recognized how great of a selling point this was and crafted an advertisement. In those days, newspaper ads were prevalent. Do you know what's most important in a newspaper ad? The headline. Which is better for newspaper ad headlines, long or short? Your answer is likely to be wrong. Longer is better. If your newspaper ad title doesn't explain the whole thing in one sentence, it's a waste. Have you ever seen a newspaper ad with a short headline? Almost none exist, so it's crucial to explain the whole thing in one sentence. The headline Ogilvy wrote for Rolls-Royce back then was particularly cool. He said, "At 60 miles an hour, the loudest noise in the new Rolls-Royce comes from the electric clock." Cool, isn't it? Just by seeing this ad, you'd think, wow, this car must be really quiet. Quieter than our studio even. That's impressive. That's advertising for you. How about this for Schlitz? Every bottle of Schlitz beer undergoes high-temperature pure oxygen flushing before bottling to ensure its crisp taste. The Schlitz advertisement was featured with a long headline accompanied by an illustration of a bottle being blown with additional text beside it. However, upon reviewing it, the owner found it amusing but impractical. He explained to the Hopkins that this process was standard in beer production and not a unique selling point for Schlitz. Frustrated, the advertiser Hopkins proposed a bet. If the ad made money, the owner would pay him back. If not, it would be a gift. The two signed a contract and went back to run the ad. Now imagine yourself as a beer consumer. Would you be intrigued by an ad claiming that a beer undergoes high-temperature pure oxygen flushing to ensure its crisp taste? Definitely. Do you know how you will drink it? I can picture it for you. You just open a bottle, pour it into a cup, and drink it. You know what? The taste really is different. Do you believe it? So, other companies were furious when they saw this. It seemed so shameless. We could run an ad too saying we do the same. But have you ever seen an advertisement that says, "We do this too"? So why couldn't the owner find any selling point when he knows so much about beer? This is called the curse of knowledge. When you are too familiar with something, you find it difficult to articulate its value. Communication between people often suffers from the curse of knowledge, and this is the biggest tragedy between parents and children. That is, many parents love their children deeply, but the children are completely unaware of this. Some children even think that their parents hate them, believing their parents see them as a source of embarrassment, which leads them to run away from home. They feel like burdens at home, nuisance. Why? Because their parents believe that love is self-evident and that love is natural. If their parents don't love them, who else would they love? So their parents nag them every day, constantly criticize them, and scold them on a daily basis, causing them to think that their parents might prefer the neighbor's child because their parents always praises them. This is how the tragedy of life is caused. So, you see, there is a part called the privacy quadrant in leadership, which is divided into 3 layers. Then there's another part where others know something that I don't know, which is called the blind spot quadrant. This has a great impact on me. Before I learned about Johari Windows, I never realized that I had a particularly large blind spot quadrant. But after learning about it, I discovered that I do have blind spots. Everyone has blind spots. You know, when my wife argues with me, she often shares my blind spots. Once she said, "Do you know what your biggest problem is? You speak very hurtfully. You like to ridicule others, and your happiness is built on their pain. You've offended a lot of people." She was talking about me. I said, "I am nothing like that," and stopped joking around. "I am a reader of the Diamond Sutra. How could I be such a person? You're biased against me." The conversation ended unpleasantly. Later, I asked my friends, "Do you think I'm mean? Have I ever ridiculed you? I never felt that way. Is there really such a situation?" My friends saw how serious I was and responded earnestly, "Fan Deng, you don't need to take it to heart. Everyone is used to it. It's no big deal." I suddenly realized that being sarcastic and mocking others had become a label of me. When I was a host or a teacher, it was my responsibility to maintain a good atmosphere for the whole audience, and it seemed harmless to mock a couple of people. However, I realized that it hurt those individuals. This is the blind spot quadrant. Now let me ask you, would you like to know about your own blind spots? When others point out your blind spots, should you thank them? On the other hand, think about it. What is your usual reaction when someone ruthlessly points out your blind spots? I've heard many people say that when their blind spots are pointed out, they feel unhappy, suspicious, angry, or even end relationships. Very few people like me will ask a friend about it. So the blind spot quadrant is a large area in our lives that needs to be explored. The biggest feature of this area is that if others don't tell you, you will never know it, and it is difficult to find it through self-reflection. So you need to find someone who can share your blind spot quadrant with you. When you hear a surprising and unacceptable statement, stop and ask yourself, could this be one of my blind spots? This point is very important. Remember this. Whenever you hear something, ask yourself, could this be one of my blind spots? Then you will make great progress. Finally, there's the last quadrant. Things you don't know and others don't know either. This part is called the potential quadrant. Among these 4 quadrants, which one has the largest area? The potential quadrant is definitely the largest. You might say, I am almost 60. What potential do I still have? Even at 70, there's potential. Warren Buffett's idol is the founder of an American blanket company who started her business at 88. She decided she didn't want to be just an old lady anymore and wanted to become a CEO. She founded the blanket company and ran it until she passed away at 106. You see, the potential quadrant is immeasurable. There is a very good saying in Buddhism that goes, "Even if tomorrow is the end of the world, tonight I will still plant a garden full of lotus flowers." This is the potential quadrant. Understanding these 4 quadrants, how does this benefit our leadership? So let me ask everyone, in the process of our growth, which quadrant is constantly expanding? Think about it. From arriving in Beijing with nothing to now owning a company and knowing a lot of people, which quadrant has been expanding throughout this process? It's certainly the open quadrant. As you meet more people and more people get to know you, your open quadrant grows larger. In this process, how can we expand our open quadrant? Psychologists tell us 2 methods. The first method is called the method of transforming from the private quadrant to the open quadrant, which is self-disclosure. That is, I need to share more about myself with others. For example, when Jack Ma gives speeches all day long, is that self-disclosure? When we advertise, is that self-disclosure? When we talk about our entrepreneurial ideas, pitch for investments, or share our growth stories at private board meetings, all of these are processes of self-disclosure. Self-disclosure can reduce your private quadrant and increase your open quadrant. Many people want to be leaders, but you have to articulate your dream first. I have a dream. You have to speak out your dream first. Another methodology to transform the blind spot quadrant into the open quadrant is called soliciting feedback. You ask, "Can you please tell me?" Just like many companies have complaint hotlines, you can complain if you have problems. This is the blind spot quadrant. When we use self-disclosure to reduce the privacy quadrant and solicit feedback to reduce the blind spot quadrant, you will find that our open quadrant is slowly expanding. When this open quadrant is expanded, what do you gain? The conclusion that psychologists give us is that what you gain at this time is called respect and trust. So the most amazing thing about this picture is that it reveals to us where the respect and trust between people come from. If you don't believe it, rank them and see who you respect and trust the most in this world. I believe that most people will write about their parents. I have asked so many students, and they all said their parents. Why? Because your parents are officials? No. It's because they have known you since you were born. The person you first opened your eyes to is them, so the open quadrant between you and your parents is the largest in the world. Then who is next in line? We talk about brothers and sisters, wife and children, and then childhood friends, classmates and comrades in arms, people in the same office, people in the next office, people you have had dinner with once, people who look familiar, and finally, who is the person we respect and trust the least. You will find that the people you respect and trust the most are not the so-called bad people because you don't know who the bad people are. The people you respect and trust the most are strangers. It is based on the size of the open quadrant. Therefore, you will feel particularly touched when you find that your relationship with a colleague who you weren't close to originally improves significantly after spending a month together on a business trip, dealing with debt recovery. After a month of working together and facing challenges, with one person taking the lead while the other supports, the relationship becomes stronger. This is because your open quadrants have expanded. So if you want to build enough respect and trust in your team, you have to deliberately think of some ways to expand the open quadrant between you and them. Then when you replace me with my brand or my company, you will find that your brand and your company also need to expand the open quadrant in this society. Only by increasing your understanding of others can you gain true respect and trust. One of our students' organizations is particularly eager to learn. After attending one of my lectures, they went back and organized a weekly open quadrant expansion meeting. During this meeting, they did not talk about business matters, but expanded the open quadrant and let everyone share their life experiences. Over time, they noticed a significant improvement in the team atmosphere because the open quadrants were expanded. This concept is a crucial part of the book, highlighting the importance of understanding the sources of respect and trust.